So we just arrived to our first roundtable session today. It will be EELISA InnoCore Innovation Talks. It will be all about green technology in the field of social innovation through European collaborations in the era of the European Green Deal. The panelists will be Alice Sheppard. She's the community manager at University College London's Extreme Citizen Science Research Group. It sounds very exciting, and I'm sure she can push citizen science to very high limits based on her previous project called Galaxy Zoo. Peter Kaderjak is the head of the Zero Carbon Center at BME. He has an extensive academic and policy experience in the field of energy, sector regulation, and energy and climate policy. Koen from European Network of Living Labs. He has been working with them since 2006 on various cutting-edge sounding projects from iCity, iMinds to City of Things and so on. I'm very sure he will elaborate these in detail very soon. And Borbála Schenk, you've already met her. She's the Chief European Research Funding Advisor at BME. So welcome them here on stage and also on Zoom.
Welcome to this roundtable session, which is also an EELISA innovation talk session, the first of its kind. We have many supporters to whom we thank for their support, and like National Research Development and Innovation Office, the Budapest University of Technology and Economics, of course, and the EELISA network, which is a European University Alliance for the development of collaborations towards a new concept of the European engineership, both regarding education and research. So this event now is the first in the EELISA Innovation Talk series. And we chose a very interesting, or I hope it's a very interesting topic, which is about basically social innovation. But social innovation in a sense that everybody, like engineers, natural scientists, should also know about, because what we deal with here and what the European Green Deal is about basically is not only like technology development, is not only about coming up and developing more effective and more usable tools, but this is like a mindset change. And for this mindset change, we require new approaches, we require new perspectives, and we require a kind of a co-creation approach. So that is why we are going to explore some of the most exciting co-creation approaches that are available now in the European research scene. We are going to talk about citizen science. We are going to talk about positive energy neighborhoods, and we are going to talk about living labs. So with this, I would just give the floor to Alice Sheppard, who is a very experienced practical expert in citizen science projects, and I would like to give her the floor. We are going to listen to short presentations from each of our panelists, and then we are going to have a short discussion. So Alice, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me along. Hopefully my slides are visible to everyone.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Yes, it's my great pleasure to give a quick talk about citizen science. Some of you will be familiar with it and some will not. In short, citizen science is when members of the public take part in scientific investigation of their own. This might be along with professional scientists, or it might be something started by them. And I'm going to run through a few examples, because I always think examples is much better than a definition. For example, people might monitor plants, look at their life cycles, for example, when their leaves and their flowers and seeds start appearing. And this is a way to show whether climate change is having an effect on them if the cycles change and starts getting earlier every year, for example. Another example, which was kindly mentioned earlier, is Galaxy Zoo. This was a wonderful project that I didn't lead on, but I was a very involved volunteer for many years, a bit of a community manager there. This was very much started by astrophysicists in 2007. There was a robotic telescope which took millions, literally millions of pictures of our nearby galaxy and surrounding galaxies and asked the public to classify them by shape. In doing this, members of the public, not necessarily with any scientific training, discovered quite a few new types of astronomical object, as well as allowing us to map the history of the universe a lot better, which was a very fascinating project. Another example from my current research group is what they're calling extreme citizen science and data visualization. In this case, they're working with people in various parts of the world, indigenous groups who may be non-literate or semi-literate. And they're often living in wonderful biodiverse areas such as the rainforest, so they don't have access to many modern resources, but their knowledge of their local area is absolutely immense. Unfortunately, some of them are facing a lot of persecution, for example, illegal poaching or logging, general environmental intrusions, and not being listened to very much. So they worked with some of my colleagues to design apps to report what's going on in a safe way. So as you can see, there's a huge variety of what citizen science may be about and may be for. So in short, it's when people are doing science that's not necessarily part of their job, it should be accessible to anyone who wants to get involved, though, of course, this will have very many different levels. The sort of variety you might get from project to project is absolutely enormous. And obviously, it's getting a lot more popular in this age of smartphones and the internet, but that doesn't mean it's a new thing. It's been taking place for many hundreds of years. Charles Darwin is an often cited example because a lot of his work was corresponding with people who were telling him about what they were finding in their gardens, for example. If a scientist has a huge amount of big data, for example, from a robotic telescope, it's really useful to them. And if they're a policymaker and they want to find out more about an area, how to tackle a problem, again, it's really useful. People do citizen science for many reasons, and usually lots at once. They might simply be interested in astronomy, or they might have a specific goal in mind, such as to cure a disease or to tackle pollution. A paper found that the most important reason to people was a wish to contribute to scientific research. So the public really does believe in science as a good progressive thing that needs to happen. I think that's a wonderful thing. Muki Hakle, who is the director of my research group, Extreme Citizen Science, developed this typology about a decade ago. If you read from bottom up, you can see that what is called level 1 might simply be pointing your phone at something to measure light levels, for example, and going up to the top, it might be a community group who define the problem themselves and do all the thinking and researching, and then they might contact a scientist to ask for some help or some equipment. There's quite a variety there, and level 4 is not necessarily better than level 1, but level 4 is certainly where the social innovations are probably happening. Now, some direct examples of green technology and social innovation when it comes to citizen science. Mapping for Change. Some of my colleagues run this lovely social enterprise, mostly in London, but also in places like Kampala, the capital of Uganda. They work with communities to make maps. It's not just adding things to Google Maps or OpenStreetMap, but they might make maps of, for example, where air pollution or odor pollution is at its worst. It might be a community issue such as somebody's history and heritage, or it might be looking at who is participating in what facilities are available to people. And these maps can tell us an enormous amount about an area that Google Maps cannot tell us. And from then on, policymakers can go and investigate problems, or communities can press for their own solutions, or simply learn more about themselves. Another social innovation is a wonderful community group that I got to know a couple of years ago in London. Local volunteers wade out into the river and they test for water quality. They take water samples and they survey the wildlife, what species are present and what are not present. And they do this checking against maps of where sewage outlets are. Sewage pollution in London's rivers and the seas around the UK is a big problem at the moment. It made a lot of news headlines because the sewage system is, shall we say, quite old and has not really been upgraded very much. In more recent months, the people who started this have written a lot of fantastic information packs to allow any group anywhere in the UK or beyond UK to do similar work, to indicate what species show something about water quality, how to track down which sewage outlet is causing a problem and report it. Now we're moving on to Germany, where an astronomer working with several members of the community developed this app, the Nachtlicht app, the Nightlight app. These people wanted to survey various German streets in various different towns, Potsdam and Berlin. They walked around and they counted up many, many different light sources, not just street lights, but also traffic lights, billboards, advertising, building lights. And they compare the light output from all of these. And interestingly, a similar experiment was done in Arizona, USA, which found that street lights actually contribute only a small amount of the light pollution. And they check this against data from satellites which orbit the Earth and look at a city's total light output. This app was co-designed with people like a local cartographer and a wildlife enthusiast who knows where all the bats like to hang out. So it's a co-designed app and a co-designed methodology where it wasn't just an astronomer leading it, but there was an entire community of people involved bringing all their expertise together. This last project, which I'm going to show you, is a personal favorite of mine because about 10 years ago, when I was a struggling master's student with a broken laptop, they fixed my laptop for me and saved me a lot of trouble and an impossible expense. They hold what they call restart parties around London. They rent a school hall or somewhere for an evening. They invite members of the public to come in with their broken gadgets. A volunteer will sit with that person. They'll look at the broken gadget, see what they can do to mend it, and show the person also how to mend it. Meanwhile, there's also a flip chart at the front of the hall, which lists who's got a problem, what the gadget is, what needs doing, and whether it was fixed or not. Sometimes, of course, the gadget cannot be fixed. For example, it's too badly broken, or indeed because the electronics company has built in some obsolescence so that it's designed to break or designed to be impossible to repair so that the person is compelled to buy a new one. Great for profits, not so good for the environment, for example. And the Restart Project have collected 21,000 data points on gadgets that have broken in this way. And they're using this data to push for better right to repair laws. Now, if that's not green technology, I don't know what is. Now, the idea is to create a circular economy where a gadget is built and it's designed to last well and to be repaired as many times as possible. So if you want to try out citizen science, these platforms are a nice place to start. And there is some specialist citizen science going on in Hungary, which I think is where most of you are. So you can learn more about it at this site, which I helped build about a year ago. And if you want to start a project, try lots of them out first. But the citizen science community is really happy to help, and we've built some special courses for you, which I think are going to be very useful for anyone who wants to build a project themselves. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much, and I hope we've got time for questions.
Thank you very much, Alice. That was very fascinating. Thank you for all these practical examples. And now I'm going to give the floor to Peter Kaderjak, and he is going to talk about the renewable energy communities in Hungary.
Thank you very much, Borbála. Good morning to everyone. My name is Peter Kaderjak, representing Zero Carbon Hub at FIEC at the Budapest University of Technology and Economics. And Borbála asked me to provide you a brief on our activities to support building what we call energy communities in Hungary, and how this work can both promote the reaching the goals of the Green Deal, and at the same time promote social innovation in Hungary. Now, the relevance of renewable energy communities are quite apparent to support Green Deal implementation in the EU. As you know, the Green Deal objective is to promote a green and digital economic transition in Europe. When we come to energy, that means that the future energy system, especially the electricity system in Europe, is to become decarbonized, but also at the same time to get very much decentralized and digital. And consumers will, in this case, play a much more role in the energy system as compared to what they did before, because they also produce energy and electricity simply by installing like household size photovoltaic generation units on the rooftops and in other ways. And major objective of the Green Deal is to empower these consumers, we call prosumers, to participate in the market and better utilize local renewable energy resources. Now, it is not only that individuals are promoted through this process, but also there is objective really to use many of the local renewable resources that we have at locations like this, like sun, like geothermal energy, like bioenergy, to use it more systematically locally, and instead of using fossil fuels and importing fossil fuels into local communities. And energy communities might play a very important role in this process. And energy communities, as we are talking about them, are focused much more on producing societal benefits instead of business profits. So their objective is really to, when using local renewable energy resources, also contribute to building up local communities and better integrate them. And as we see in recent years, the objective by the EU members to decarbonize our system is ever increased. Now it's up to 45%. By 2030, all energy should come from renewables. In Hungary, we have different initiatives like the rooftop solar initiative. So the big question is how really to reach these objectives and how energy communities can help in reaching those objectives by really locally organizing renewable energy production and consumption at the same time. Now, in Hungary, we have several experiments to build these energy communities now. There is one example I just wanted to show you where innovation and innovative energy solutions are also used to combat deep poverty in some locations in Hungary. There is a government program for the 300 settlements in Hungary in really deep poverty. This program is invented and managed by the Hungarian Charity Service of the Order of Malta and ENOLL Hungary, so that the charity puts a solar park close to the settlement to provide and collect revenues from this installment, and then collect the money and provide a grant from this money to the poorest people at the settlement, and they do that in an innovative way to put prepaid meters to the houses, and the owners of those houses in this way get at least one heated room for children who did not have this heated room before, and this room is heated by clean electricity instead of burning waste and destroying essentially the health of very young children. So now I think this is a very nice example of combining 21st century clean technology with a government program to combat deep poverty. And this is just one example of Tiszabő in Hungary, when people get the heating devices and also the prepaid meters. And finally, then the organizer, the charity, finally plays a key role in both managing the technology and managing the social environment in which this experiment is put into operation. Now, if you are interested, you can also visit the YouTube video. We don't have time now to watch it, but I think that's a really nice example of creating local energy communities. Now, in Hungary, we also have a program to promote more complex energy communities, if you wish. The background is that Hungary decided back to 2020 to become a climate neutral country by 2050. Our national energy and climate plans foresees about 200 energy communities established at a minimum by 2030. And in order to support experimentation and social experiments in creating these energy communities, which is, as Borbala said, is not just a technical innovation. You need social innovation also as a component of this process. So to promote the experimentation with these local innovations, there was a tender launched for energy communities, also put in place 2 years ago. 34 applicants, 7 winners was the result of that, and the tender condition included already that those who went for the proposal should put forward regulatory innovative proposals how to support the establishment of energy communities in Hungary. And now the 7 pilot projects that won support 2 years ago consists of 6 local energy community proposals and 1 apartment house energy community project, which all try to combine local load of electricity and also how to meet this load by putting smaller and larger installments of photovoltaic generation units close to sometimes electric vehicles, charging stations, and also how to combine them with storage applications so that the rest of the consumption of local energy consumers are met by renewable energy produced locally. And now our institute, Zero Carbon Hub at BME, has been doing a mentoring of these 7 pilot projects in the last years. This is an energy community pilot project, and essentially throughout several workshops that we have been organizing for the participants of these projects, we found out that there are several innovation-related issues to be solved when creating these energy communities. There are technical innovation issues, how to create microgrids, metering, settlement solutions for these communities, also how to integrate into the electricity system. These small communities, how do the energy community and the overall energy market interact? What business models can we use for these non-profit organizations so that they remain viable, although they don't produce business profits, but rather social benefits? How regulatory innovation should be put in place to incentivize and promote production of social benefits instead of company profits. And then social innovation, how to encourage cooperation, sharing of production with others in those circumstances. We have done this through a series of stakeholder workshops to promote information exchange, sharing best practices, balancing the competition and cooperation among the pilot project owners, and also providing regulatory support to promote cooperation. And finally, I think the conclusion with our colleagues is that harvesting social benefits from energy sector decentralization through energy communities requires a massive social innovation, and innovation hubs like ZKK involving major stakeholders can help harvesting those benefits. And my understanding is that once we identify those innovation needs, our university, BME, has significant competencies to meet energy community-related innovation needs. So, in case you are also working on issues like this, and would like to cooperate with us and sharing experiences with us how to build green, sustainable, locally valuable energy communities all over Europe, we would be very much happy to get contacted. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'm absolutely positive that there will be a lot of possibilities for cooperation, as EELISA, which is a university alliance of 8 universities in Europe, is deeply committed to achieve social innovation with the technological development and technological research. So EELISA as a community is taking a new approach to combine engineering and natural sciences competencies with this perspective of achieving like social innovation. Now I would like to give the floor to our third and last presenter, Koen, Vervoort. Koen is going to talk briefly about what living labs are. So Koen, the floor is yours.
Yes, first and foremost, thank you for having me, and very glad to be with you. Let me quickly check if you can see my slides in presentation mode. Are they like they are supposed to be?
It's fine.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that usually goes wrong. Therefore, I double check. So yes, hello everybody, nice to be here, and let me try to quickly explain in 10 minutes what living labs are about. They are actually pretty much related to what our previous speakers were telling, because citizen science can be a perfect part of a living lab, and the same goes for positive energy environments. We are ENOLL, the European Network of Living Labs, and we are around since 2007, and we are the global network actually where we collect living lab organizations, and we try to support them in many different ways. So what are they now, living labs? I usually explain it by what they are not. A living lab, it's not a project. A living lab, it's not a building where you do co-creation. A living lab is not just a group of people doing citizen science or creating energy neighborhoods. No, a living lab is the sum of this all, and we define them as to be the orchestrators, the organizations which operate as an orchestrator in a quadruple helix model. And the quadruple helix bringing together academia, government, private sector, and society, where then the citizen science and the energy communities, which were mentioned earlier, will take part. And there is not such thing like one indefinite definition of living labs, because there are multiple types of living labs, but they do all have common elements, which you can see on the top right here. They operate as the orchestrators, as I already mentioned. They use a multi-method approach, meaning you adapt the research method, and this is probably a mindset which needs to be taken. The next research step in a project is based on the outcome of the previous one. It's not set in stone while starting. They do it in a real life setting. Certainly citizen science and energy communities are real life settings, via co-creation and active user involvement and participation of all those stakeholders of the quadruple helix. So this is to explain that a living lab is not a building or a group of people. So on a macro level, you have the, let's say, the legal entity, the organization, the constellation, the tools and the equipment which they are using, on which they develop in the meso level projects and methodologies, which exist in the micro level out of activities and or research steps. What types of living labs are there? And I will get back to your Green Deal related topics pretty soon. So you have urban and rural living labs, urban in the city set, rural in the more non-city setting. You have living labs which are focused on research, you have living labs which are focused on technologies, and you have living labs which are focused on incubation of services, called living labs as a service. Most of our living labs, they combine it all. But they have a specific focus. And as you can see, the host of living labs, those organizations being the orchestrators, 40% or nearby 40% of them exist out of organizations like yours, universities and other academic institutions. The strengths of a living lab, it is above all the inclusion of all the stakeholders from the beginning to the end of an innovation funnel. It is about a holistic approach towards wicked problems, and I will get back to that, because if I can relate to the citizen science and the energy communities which were presented earlier, more and more living labs are pulling the chariot, let's say, in what we call the collaboratory model, in which living labs, edu labs, fab labs, citizen science, energy communities, all these open innovation arrangements, like they say, are working together in a kind of super lab to serve cities, regions, governments to solve really wicked problems. And they are mostly this time related to the Green Deal or to social innovation and the resilience after the COVID period, which we just faced. The actors in the living lab, you have 5 of them. I will focus for now on the researchers. So when we talk about researchers inside a living lab coordination team running a living lab, we call them human interaction specialists, because they should have a background in social science somewhere. They should be familiar on how to interact with all those users, on how to co-create and so on and so on. So they should have an extensive knowledge about participatory tools and methods. And the main issue, like I said earlier, is the research mindset versus the delivery mindset. As I mentioned earlier, the multi-method approach. When you write a project, a living lab project, you will define some phases with some research steps, but it could be that the last 5 described ones will change based on the input, like I said. What we noticed over time, that this is not always easy for researchers to put your head around it. But I can tell you from experience, I've done 250 living lab projects in my life. It's a real enrichment as a researcher to see and listen to the people which you are doing it for, actually. So how does this work? I can talk for hours, of course, Borbala, but I will not do this. I will just pick one out of the long list of European projects within the Green Deal frame, which we are working on, which is the SCORE project, in which we are developing together with 10 cities spread over Europe and Turkey, coastal city living labs, facing flood or too many or too less water, and so on and so on. So citizen science is actually a part of it. So in every of those 10 cities, there are citizen science communities which are equipped by us with the sensors to measure water levels, humidity, rainfall, and even referring to, I forgot the name of your project, Alice, the zoo, the one where they are taking water samples. That's happening too.
Oh yes, Outfall Safari.
Yeah, that's one. Sorry, I forgot about the name. So We have developed at ENOLL a mapping canvas, as you can see on the central of the slide, to support the cities and organizations to run such projects, to keep track of what are we doing, when are we doing it, why, because why is always the most question inside the Living Lab. You should always reflect to why are we doing what we are doing. If not, you develop a chair while you were planning to create a bike. Just as an example. Hungary, well, we are very proud that we have two of our leading organizations from Hungary. You might know them both, I hope so, and if not, please check them out. They are both active. The one, I took one from the Green Deal field, which is UMKI, which is not only a Living Lab, but also a research infrastructure, which is highly related to it. And they are working in the agriculture sector, of course. And then the other one is Trebach from Nahikovatsky. I hope I pronounced this right. I'm not a Hungarian, sorry. And they are mainly working in social innovation and inclusion of those communities, which were mentioned earlier by Peter as well, by the way. So what we do, how do we serve them? We try to serve them in 3 different ways. And we offer them a path to grow. We label them because we know by having the label of ENOLL, they will get easier sustainable funding. Yes, the main focus is capacity building, foster knowledge exchange, foster peer-to-peer learning, foster community building, across Living Labs, across different regions and across different sectors. And that's what we are trying to do. And one other way, which I would like to finish my talk with, is we have created, because of course we noticed clusters inside our network. By the way, we have 160 active member organizations in the world at this moment. And we kind of brought them together in more focused areas. As you can see, relating again once more to the previous speakers, we have one which is on energy and environment. It's led by the biggest Living Lab in Switzerland from Hessel. We have one, as you can see on the top, in collaboration with the JRC and the Director General of Environment on digital sustainability for zero pollution, which is about decarbonization and how can digital twins and other inventive solutions help with that. Lots of it related to what you were saying, Alice, in there. And social innovation and digital rights, that is about inclusion, gender equality, not leaving anything behind, closing the digital gap, all that kind of stuff. And well, the other ones, they speak for themselves. So I think with one more last slide, if you allow me, I know I'm over time 1 minute, but this comes all together in what we call Open Living Lab Days, which is the international gathering on an annual basis of all Living Lab related practitioners, researchers, policymakers, companies active or interested to become active. And with this, I will end my presentation.
Thank you very much, Koen, for this very interesting presentation. I would open the floor for discussion with actually one question to you all. And we have been covering many important areas, many important methods of social innovation, energy communities, citizen science, living labs. What would be very important for us, and as ELISA has a primary objective, as I mentioned, to combine engineering and technological development research with this with social innovation perspective, with the need of creating societal impact. And we also have ELISA communities, which are basically bottom-up organized communities of students, professors, researchers and other stakeholders who aim to catalyze cooperation in certain areas, and we also have a renewable energy ELISA community. So what would be your practical advice for students or researchers how to start with these methods, if they want to take up more of that, if they want to implement these social innovation aspects in their research design? Alice, please.
Oh gosh, well, my first advice would be to give citizen science a try. Try lots of projects and particularly try something on a subject where you are not an expert, because that will give you a really good grounding in thinking like a participant and show you what it's like to participate in something completely new. And after that, what I would do is go out and talk to people, not academics, but just people who are working outside universities or schools, people who are interested in science or in improving their neighborhood or community, but who are just who might not necessarily think of themselves as very scientific. See what they're interested in and see what sort of things they're already doing, because chances are there's friends of your local park or someone who'd really like to build some kind of energy community, which I think those are wonderful, by the way. I didn't really know about them. And see what they're already doing. So that would be how to get it started. And yes, absolutely, try building your projects and ask as many different people as possible to test them out. People are really helpful and really generous that way, I find.
Thank you very much, Peter.
For me, the presentations were very much encouraging indeed, and very similar thing came into my mind. What Alice said, that maybe academics should leave the buildings of the universities and go out and meet people and talk to people, and not only read and try to implement textbooks and theories, but get much more interested in people's opinion and way of thinking and organizing communities, and of course apply theory, the basics, and try to make use of those, but not necessarily trying to press and force those theories on people, but rather to use theories to move things ahead as people would like to do that. So for me, that's the lesson from your interventions, and thank you very much for that message.
Thank you very much, Peter. Koen?
Yeah, I would like to refer to the first sentence in which Peter was commenting. I should definitely skip always the maybe researchers should leave the building of the university. You should always leave the building of the university, because what you need to do is don't assume. The biggest mistake you can make as a researcher is assume that you are solving a problem. You should go to the ones which you are solving the problem for and ask them, are we really solving your problem? Like I mentioned, maybe you are solving the problem of a chair while the chair was not a problem, but the car, and stuff like this. So you need to go to the people involved in your innovation research to ask them, how can we help them? And adapt your mind to what you can do to serve them, not the other way around. If you want to work with communities or individual citizens or any other end user, like they could call, you should treat them as equal. They are not just a data bank providing data for you. They have very valuable content, and you will learn by doing so that your research will be enriched tremendously by the insights. I always say, and probably, and Alice can vouch for that probably as well, and Peter as well, you're running a project, and a project has a scope. And then you start interacting with those users, and they come with a lot of valuable feedback, which not necessarily feeds into your project at that very specific time. If I need to give you one advice, don't throw it away. Keep a golden wastebasket, like I always call it, because your next project might already have the data which you were looking for provided in the previous one, because they told you already. So listen to them. Don't just record what they produce, let's say. You need to listen through what they are saying. Read between the lines.
Thank you very much for your answers, and thank you very much for reflecting to each other's presentation. I hope that we will have many opportunities for that in the future. Now we have to wrap up this session, and I would like to thank you very much for your intervention, for the practical examples, and for all the knowledge you provided for us. This session will be available on the ELISA YouTube channel and also at the BME FIEC YouTube channel. And we do hope that this session was only a start of a conversation, and we are going to take further steps together towards social innovations that support the Green Deal. So thank you very much. And now I would give the floor back to Laszlo. Thank you.